Welcome everyone to this live online event, The 3 Secrets to Cultivating the Art and Discipline of Love. We're delighted that so many of you are here today. My name is Ashley Wimby, and I'll be your host for the call and supporting Dr. Warren Farrell as we go through this powerful material today. He will introduce 3 of the many practices needed to create the shift from role mate to soulmate. But first, a couple housekeeping items before we get started. And if you're just joining us, welcome. Many of you are already familiar with Zoom, but I want to review some things before we begin. There is a chat box you can open at any time during the webinar to engage with one another. You also have a Q&A button that you can use to write any questions that come up. After 60 minutes, we'll dive into the Q&A session where you'll have plenty of time to ask Warren any specific questions. If you have a question midway through the webinar, please only use the Q&A button only to add your questions and not the chat box. It's mostly used for sharing information with one another, okay? So while we wait for some others to join us, please put into the chat box where you are joining from. I am in Fort Collins, Colorado, so about an hour north of Denver. Where are you all from? Albuquerque, Concord, California, Montreal, Bloomington, Italy, Germany, Ohio, Cape Cod, Boston, New Hampshire. Thank you all so much for being here today. I'd like to introduce you now to Warren. Dr. Warren Farrell has coached couples and psychologists worldwide in couples communication for the past 30 years. His new online 7-week course is titled Role Mate to Soulmate, The Art and Discipline of Love. He has been chosen by the Financial Times as one of the world's top 100 thought leaders, and his books have been published in 19 languages. They include the New York Times bestseller, Why Men Are the Way They Are, plus the international bestseller, The Myth of Male Power. He recently published The Boy Crisis, and his book on couples communication, Women Can't Hear What Men Don't Say, was a selection of the Book of the Month Club. Warren has been a pioneer in both the women's movement. He was elected 3 times to the board of the National Organization for Women in New York City, and the men's movement, called by GQ magazine the Martin Luther King of the men's movement. He has been interviewed by Oprah, Barbara Walters, Peter Jennings, Katie Couric, Tucker Carlson, Larry King, Regis Philbin, Sean Hannity, Jordan Peterson, and Charlie Rose. So now I'll hand it over to Warren. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley's done a wonderful job helping me make this course viable and available to you. I'm going to start by being personal with how I ended up being a pioneer, so to speak, in both the women's and men's movements who barely communicate with each other, and what led from that experience to why I felt this particular couples communication course was so needed, despite the many others out there. I basically devoted my life to trying to observe what is needed in the culture that is left out, and that perhaps I could create a solution to. And then I'd work to try to create a solution. Usually I couldn't, but if I could, and I felt no one else was contributing that, then it was an opening for me to sort of devote part of my life. I began doing this in the late 60s. You remember the feminists in the late 60s were struggling for equal pay, for opening up sports to girls in school, and so on. They were accused, you probably remember, of being anti-male. So I and the National Organization for Women in New York City felt that a male spokesperson would take the focus away from just the accusations of being anti-male and help the culture focus on what I felt were the legitimate issues of empowering women. So I was elected to the board of the National Organization for Women in New York City, and then I spoke around the world for many years on women's issues. It took about 2 decades for me to begin to notice, though, that in many ways, boys were increasingly falling behind girls. I'd also started some 300 men's groups and about 250 women's groups, and I began to hear the men speaking about what their issues and problems were as well as the women. So I started to see that boys, for example, were committing suicide at 4 or 5 times the rate of girls. They were, and much more than they used to. They were having their sperm counts go down 60%. Their IQs were going down. And more importantly, that the culture was blind to these ways that boys and men were also hurting, in addition to girls and women hurting. So I felt I could make a needed contribution writing about this that led to many of my books, most recently the Boy Crisis book. So how did I get from that to couples communication? Just follow this connection for a minute. Worldwide, the boy crisis resides where dads do not reside. Children often lose contact with their dads after divorce. A major contributor of divorce is neither partner being able to hear personal criticism without becoming defensive. So that sort of gave me the entree into saying something is wrong. I don't want to have laws be against divorce. People should have freedom, but I want to have people have good marriages and good communication to begin with. And this inability to handle personal criticism from our loved one without becoming defensive, that was the most important single thing. So here we go in the 3 practices. What I discovered is that falling in love is biologically natural. Sustaining love is biologically unnatural. Sustaining love requires both an art and discipline of 2 things. First, filling the reservoir of love with appreciations. And second, avoiding the 4 depleters of love, or the 4 C's: criticizing, complaining, controlling, and complacency. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time first with practice 1, appreciating. Appreciating, like everything else, is best accomplished by both an art and a discipline. The discipline of doing it on specific nights. Liz, my partner, my wife, and I do it every Wednesday night. And then when we can't do it Wednesday nights, we put it off to the weekend. So that's the part of the discipline. The best way to fill the reservoir of love is by, as you're appreciating, is constantly looking out for what can be appreciated about what your partner is doing. I call that panning for gold. And the path of relationship poverty involves walking over our partner's gold without noticing it. The path to relationship wealth involves ignoring little dirty things, little dirty stones in that panning for gold. The people who panned for gold did not become wealthy by just picking out the dirty stones and focusing on them. They focused on the gold. Depositing the gold is what requires both the art and discipline. For example, let's take the art of appreciating. The art of appreciating includes appreciating your partner creatively. For example, in the workshop the online workshop that I'll be doing, I teach people many different ways of appreciating their partner creatively. One, for example, might be if your partner takes you on a scenic drive, let's say down on the cliffs of Big Sur, you might tuck a faux ticket under the windshield wiper of your car. So your partner then becomes anxious when she or he sees the ticket on the car window, so the anxiety creates focus and concentration. And then the quote ticket says, "Thank you for making the drive safe so I could absorb the beauty of our trip." So it's not just an appreciation, but the creativity has the function of having you remember that appreciation a lot longer and with a smile on your face, and a smile that's devoted to you appreciating yourself. Being creative can also allow for an appreciation to be coupled with an apology and humor. So for example, let's say you take that same drive and your partner was often warning you to be careful about the sharp curve, which most partners in a drive going down Big Sur will warn their partner about. The faux ticket might read, "We're a great team. You drive me through Big Sur, I drive you crazy." So the self-deprecating humor is to a car, basically what is to a couple what oil is to a car. So I'm going to ask you to do a quick exercise right now. Think of something you appreciate about your partner. Share that with your partner now, either verbally or in writing. So just either type it into your, email to your partner, or text it to your partner right now. Or if your partner is sitting next to you watching this, share it with her or him verbally. If you can't think of an appreciation for your partner, sort of make one up. When it comes to being appreciated, we have a wide variety of acceptability. And if you can't appreciate your partner now with even one appreciation, then you really do need the course. Okay, the secret, I hope you've done that. That's your first little exercise here. The number one secret sauce of appreciating is being specific. I do get appreciated a lot by people appreciating the books I write or the workshops I do. But somebody saying to me, oh, your workshop was wonderful, or your book was great, that sort of wears a little thin after a while. But the more specific they are, the more I feel heard and seen. So for example, let's say you're saying to your partner, you're a good cook. That's level one of appreciation of being specific. Level two might be, I like the way you cook the turkey. Now your partner is feeling a little bit seen about what you liked about what was being cooked. And then I said, being specific with curiosity. So how did you get the skin so crisp? So your partner is being seen for the cooking of the skin, and there's curiosity there about how you got it crisp. So you feel like you're being asked for advice, which makes us all feel good and needed. Level four might be, how did you make the dressing so moist? So the dressing's being noticed, what you did with the dressing was being noticed, and you're being asked for information about it. Number five might be, I love the cranberries, grapes, nuts, spices, and herbs that you put in the dressing. And I've mentioned herbs, but herbs is still vague. So level six might be, were the herbs parsley, sage, rosemary, thyme, oregano, or did you just stop with Simon and Garfunkel? And so there's a little humor there, hopefully, right? And and there's an observation of what you thought was in the herbs, but it makes no difference whether you're right or wrong. Your partner is seeing that you're looking, you're caring, you've noticed. And then many people say, "Oh, great dinner. Do you have a recipe?" Well, it's much more meaningful to ask for a recipe when you've gone through these specifics. Your partners feel seen, heard, and that everything she or he did about that turkey was really part of what you took in. So I'm going to be asking you to do a part B exercise in this practice. I'm going to ask you to write down 4 levels of specificity that about the appreciation either that you gave your partner, or if through my example of the cooking, you want to take a different appreciation, your partner will not mind a second one. Do the second appreciation and do it at 4 levels of specificity. Just if you can't think of a deeper level of specificity, work with yourself, make believe you can. Go deeper, be more, just work on that inside of your mind. You'll have 90 seconds to do that. I did this in part because my wife is watching in the next room, and I'm sort of looking forward to the appreciation after we finish this. You have about 15 seconds left. Okay, I'll let you do that. The actual delivery of the appreciations of the 4 levels of specificity a little bit later after the workshop, after the webinar is over. So practice number 2 that I promised is the 4 depleters of love. We've learned how to fill the reservoir of love, but I want you to be observing what the 4 depleters of love are. And they're what I call the 4 C's: criticizing, complaining, controlling, and complacency. Most people don't feel they criticize nearly as often as their partner feels that they criticize. And here's why. When you criticize, most of the time you feel you're giving a suggestion, an idea, something to improve the relationship or improve the situation, or improve, they just went shopping, to improve the shopping experience. They feel it's a helpful suggestion. The person hearing that suggestion, sometimes that suggestion is meant to create greater intimacy or efficiency in the relationship. A person hearing almost any request for a change in behavior or a change in attitude very frequently experiences that request, that suggestion that you intended for greater intimacy. They experience it as a criticism. And you probably do when it's reversed. And your partner just feels it's a suggestion, an idea, and you may experience it as a criticism. Secondly, complaints. They're also tricky. Let's say you're the one that plans reservations at a restaurant. You make a suggestion of a restaurant, and your partner gets to the restaurant and she or he is saying, boy, the service is really slow. It took us much longer to sit down than they said. This soup was cold. Each criticism of the quote restaurant is often experienced by the person who made the reservation as something that is a complaint, not about the restaurant, but about them having made that suggestion of the restaurant. For you, it's a complaint about the food, the soup, etc., the atmosphere. And so it's really important to sort of understand that difference in the experience of a criticism by the giver versus the receiver, the experience of a complaint by the giver versus the receiver. Controlling. Most people recognize that they can criticize and they complain a bit more often than even they would say that they like. However, very few people say that they're controlling. However, if you feel, just think about this, if you feel criticized by your partner and you feel complained about by your partner, don't you feel controlled? The addition of criticism and complaining is a bottom line of feeling controlled, and therefore thinking of you as controlling. Complacency, the 4th C. Being taken for granted, as in, you probably remember the song from Barbra Streisand, I think Neil Diamond did it with her, about "You don't bring me flowers anymore." That's an example of complacency. So I'm going to ask you to do a quickie exercise for the second practice. And I'm going to ask you to do what I call a reversing complacency exercise. Write down or email or text one way that you can do something to reverse complacency, like in the next day, in the next 24 hours, like bringing your partner flowers, or even just one flower, putting on your partner's favorite music and asking him to dance with you. Or let's say your partner cooked something that was really good and put it in the refrigerator, putting a Post-it on what it was that the leftover that you loved, and saying a multiple level of appreciation. I love this dressing. It was so moist and had such great herbs in it. So there you're doing a hybrid of appreciation plus reversing complacency. And all appreciations reverse complacency. The quickie exercise, part B, is to write down one complacency reversal behavior that you can do to remind you after this webinar is over to do it sometime in the next 24 hours. Just take a minute to do that. Practice number 3 is receiving criticism non-defensively. And this is the core of my couples communication workshop, Role Mate to Soulmate. And so as we're talking through this together, these are things that will be in much greater depth in the workshop, but I wanted to give you a little bit of an experience of it here, and also and have this be a way of introducing you to the online course itself. This is what I ask people to do is to do couples communication very differently. So until now, the most advanced work in couples communication was active listening. But I and other research found that active listening is almost never done without a therapist. And so I was curious as to why. And I saw that if you're a criticizer in active listening, which active listening teaches you to criticize, teaches you to criticize and your partner to hear it well, you feel good when your partner says, "What I heard you say." But if you are the one being criticized, you'll often experience a double jeopardy. Our defenses were biologically they're biologically natural. We built up defenses because when we heard an enemy criticize us, it was very functional to build up defenses so the enemy wouldn't kill us, or to kill the enemy before the enemy killed you. So that was all functional for survival. It's just terrible for love. And so what was but that genetic inheritance of our defensiveness is still within almost all human beings that survived. And so when you're being criticized, you experience a double jeopardy. You don't have that old defenselessness inside of you. And when you say I heard you say, you're repeating the criticism without those defenses. So you have that double jeopardy of not having the biologically natural defenses, and then also repeating the things that you were being criticized for. And so my job to myself was to figure out how to get around that biologically natural propensity to be defensive, and to instead be receptive to the criticism without feeling inside of yourself that you were being hurt or being too vulnerable. And so if we were biologically programmed to be defensive, I had to figure out a way of altering our natural biological state. And so I created something called 6 mindsets and a caring and sharing time. So each time you have a criticism of your partner, I ask you to go through a process of writing it down, and in ways that I'll work with you on either later here or in the workshop. And then when you write it down, the ones that survive, that are still problematic, during something called a caring and sharing time, I will ask you to share that criticism that you really, or that concern that you have about your partner, that you want to clarify and get clear the air with. But before your partner hears your criticism, she or he will move into an altered state. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by the altered state. That altered state involves you going through 6 mindsets that you move from being naturally defensive into associating that possible criticism with an opportunity to be more deeply loved. So for example, you might say, do something that one of those mindsets is what I call the love guarantee. And you would say to yourself something like, in meditative form, you would say, the more I provide a safe environment for all of your feelings, the more you'll feel loved by me. Therefore, the more you will love me, the safer you'll feel with me. And I can do that just hearing whatever you have to say. Another mindset in the workshop, I'll be asking you to sort of ask yourself this question in an experience. Actually, you can do this right now. Um, if your partner, imagine if your partner, you know that your partner has a 100% chance of dying, and you know that you could save her or him with 100% certainty. But you'd also sense in that second or so that you're thinking about this, that you would have a 50% chance of dying yourself. Would you do it if you didn't have children to be concerned about? So here's the experience that I'm asking you to go through. Your partner, you sense in some emergency, you're ready to have a car accident, or your partner's swimming in the ocean, and you realize that your partner has a 100% chance of dying, but you know you can save her or him, but that you would have a chance, about a 50% chance of dying yourself if you did that. Write down your partner. Don't ever expect that your partner will have to see this. Just write down privately or think to yourself privately. Would you take that 100% chance of 50% chance of dying yourself if you knew you could save your partner? One of my workshops, a lot of people are having challenges with each other. About a third come just to enhance their relationship. And yet 98% of men and 90% of women say yes, they would risk their life at a 50% level if children weren't an issue, if they knew that they could save their partner with 100% certainty, even though they would have a 50% chance of dying themselves. So a second mindset becomes what I call die for. So you're saying, before you hear your partner's criticism or concern, if I will die so you will live, I can listen to give you life. Or some people prefer, if I will die so you will live, the least I can do is listen to you. And so whatever of those types of mindsets works. And so you start getting yourself realizing that next to your willingness to die, listening is a pretty easy task. And that you're guaranteed love. And then when you go through 4 more mindsets, each time before you hear something critical or negative, you're in a state where you're really able to handle your partner, whatever your partner says, no matter how badly they say it, no matter how angry they are. Because part of what I teach you in the workshop is that anger is vulnerability's mask. I coach you to understand that the greater the anger, almost always, the greater the vulnerability. The difference is when you see your partner's vulnerability, you become empathetic. When you see the anger, you become defensive, angry, and wanting to attack back and save yourself. So the workshop as a whole, I'm going to transition into that because this is just a little tidbit of the workshop, but the caring and sharing part is what I'll have you set aside each week 2 hours to do. I'll teach you in the online course exactly how to do that. And then the other 166 hours of the week, there's 168 hours of the week if you didn't know that, 166 hours I have you devote to a conflict-free zone. And a lot of the effort is on how to sustain that conflict-free zone, not just to create it. And then how to conduct that caring and sharing time, with the 6 mindsets being a part of that. So for example, let's say you're in a caring in the conflict-free zone, but your partner just criticizes you, and you're thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute, this feels like a break of the conflict-free zone. I'll explain to you why that is not a break in the conflict-free zone. It is a criticism, but you can keep that criticism from becoming a conflict. So how do you do that? Instead of responding, you visualize that you have 2 options. You can respond, and then you can escalate it, and it will, with about 100% certainty, it'll become a conflict. And that will break the conflict-free zone. Or you can wait till the caring and sharing time and be heard. So when your partner criticizes you, that's a criticism, A criticism isn't a conflict until there's a dialogue or a response to it. So this is not a criticism-free zone. That'll happen, but a conflict-free zone. And so if you take the second option that you visualize, the waiting until the caring and sharing time, which I'll have you set up each week at a certain time, like say Sunday at 8 o'clock or whatever, 5 o'clock. Then, and you wait until that, then you can visualize that at that caring and sharing time, there's about 100% guarantee that your partner, after she or he goes through those 6 mindsets, your partner will feel heard and empathize with and seen. Your partner may not agree with you, and your partner will have a chance to respond with their perspective, but they'll give their perspective only after you've meditated with 6 mindsets to be able to hear their perspective perfectly. So, and I say perfectly because you will work on hearing their perspective and they'll work on hearing yours until you feel it is completely accurate. I'll teach you also how to use very core words. Like let's say your partner is criticizing you and then it's following up with another criticism to elaborate. Your partner's learning to be specific with his or her criticisms. Great. And then I'll ask you to, I'll use words like hold. And hold would be just a way of stopping the process and saying something like, let's hold this to caring and sharing. Or say to your partner, I think I can listen to you more effectively after I've done some meditating and caring and sharing. And so your partner now has a reason because your partner wants to be heard. Remember, your partner's angry. Maybe your partner's angry. And remember that that's vulnerability's mask. And so your partner is differently feeling vulnerable, even though she or he is expressing it as anger. And so one of the things I teach you to do is to how to sustain this conflict-free zone. So one example of that is I'll ask you to journal. And when I ask you to journal, like on the computer, you'll write down what you're angry with your partner about. And I'll always encourage you to be have multiple stages to that journaling. So the first stage in the journaling will be what I call the self-righteous stage. You write down every reason why you're right and every reason why your partner's wrong. And you got that out of your system, and then you can move on to more and more constructive ways of journaling so that you're deciding whether or not the journaling itself took care of the challenges you felt inside of yourself, or if they didn't, that this is something to bring up during caring and sharing. I'll teach you how to use music, how to use meditation, how to use prayer, the similarities and the differences between prayer and meditation, and a number of other methods to sustain that conflict-free zone. I'll be teaching you during the course of the workshop, not only, I will be teaching you some insights, even though insights often just disappear when a conflict comes up. I mean, like you say to somebody, all we need is love. That's an insight. But watch how fast that insight disappears when your partner criticizes you. Insights are great, but they are not sustainable usually when you're being criticized. I'll teach you and work with you on some of those insights that have proven the most helpful over the 30 years of my teaching the workshop. I'll be introducing you to many other strategies, such as the 3 A's. The first A I've already worked with you on, appreciations, but there's also something called asks and something called apologies. So many people that take the workshop feel really empowered by what I call a 4-part apology. I'll teach you how to work with your home so that everywhere your partner walks in your home, she or he will see, have the memory of positive energy. Remember when I suggested taking an appreciation and reversing complacency by putting an appreciation on the leftover meal that your partner made in the refrigerator? That the next time your partner goes to the refrigerator, she or he has a recollection in the back of their mind about the last time they went there, there was this positive experience that they had of being appreciated when they opened the refrigerator door. You multiply that to many areas in the room, in the home, and you'll find that your home will have a different feng shui, so to speak. Many problems, empathy that I've just focused on is really wonderful, and that really solves about 80% of most problems. However, there's some problems that can't be solved by empathy alone that require concrete decisions. And so one of the tools in the workshop, with the strategies in the workshop, is how to solve problems with concrete decisions that cannot just be solved by empathy alone. One of you wants to go on vacation, one place, somebody else a different place. One wants to live in the country, the other wants to live in the city. There are creative strategies to almost always, not always, but almost always come up with a win-win solution. In the online course, it's really important to know that you'll be given exercises as to where you can practice these strategies, how you can practice them, and very concrete ways of carrying them out. I am a romantic pragmatist. I'm interested not in saying I love you, but in knowing how to make my partner feel loved. And I hope I can do the same and help you do the same as well. The course that we're offering, I wanted to offer it as reasonably as possible. So while the course itself is $397, it is $297 if you sign up in what they call the early bird deadline, which is by May 4th, Wednesday, May 4th at midnight Pacific time. And the date of the course itself, when you'll get all 7 videos from the course, all the handouts you'll be given. You'll see me do the course with 2 other couples. So you'll have 2 basic choices. You can go through the course like I do it at Esalen or other workshop retreats. And you can do it just by following my instructions and doing the exercises. Or you can watch 2 other couples go through it with me. And the couples are really brilliant and thoughtful and very open about what they're doing with. And then I work with them on solving the problems that they encounter and taking it to a deeper level. So you can get in the online course actually goes much deeper than my courses, than I have time to do in my weekend courses. And so you can either do it the brief way of just listening to me and following the instructions, or you can do it in the more in-depth way, or do it the brief way first and come back and do it a second time in a more in-depth way. And so that's sort of the summary of what I wanted to share with you at the crucial level in the webinar, and some of the ideas of what happens in the online course itself. As I said, the online course goes much deeper than the actual courses in person do. They don't always give you the advantages of having they don't give you the advantages of having the hot tubs of Esalen or the retreat dimensions of the workshops, but they're about 10% of the cost, and you can certainly do both, of course. That's all I have to share at the outset, and if there's any questions, I'll be happy to do my best to answer them.
Please put your questions in the Q&A box. I see there's some questions in the chat. That would be great if you would all just put those questions in the Q&A box. And I've put all of the links, the link and the information, Warren, in the chat box, so everyone has those.
Well, great. And then can you pull some of the questions out of the chat box or just ask me some of those? So I'll be happy to work with them even from the chat box.
You want them right now?
Yeah. Let's go for
it. Okay. Well, Rich has a question. Please explain the differences of the 2 training options. Do you want me to explain that in more detail?
Sure.
Okay, Rich. Here, let me get on camera here just for a second. So when you register, you will have access to a course portal, and that's customized, and it has a lot of information. It has videos that Warren has pre-recorded. They're teaching videos, as well as handouts for the course. So you can watch the videos, and that's all you can do, or you can also attend live to each class, which is for 7 weeks starting in May, right? So those are the 2 options. Most people are probably going to want to do it live, but some may not. So there's a difference there.
Right. You'll have you'll get 7 videos, and um, if you're doing it live with me, probably the best strategy is to watch a video each week and then do the online connection with me. And what I'll do in that online connection is I'll first ask you to sort of say everything that really worked for you. And we'll just spend a few minutes on that. And then we'll spend the bulk of it talking about what didn't work for you. So I won't be redoing what I did in the video. I'll be, I may give you, a 3-minute summary of it. So if you have missed it, you're not totally lost. But your job will be to watch the video first, and then after they last either an hour, or if you can do the 2-hour version where I go through and do it more in depth with the other couple that I have on there. And then after you watch that video, then you'll ask me any questions, and you'll say what worked for you to inspire everybody else, and to also help people focus on what does work for them. If you may have shortchanged that yourself, and I'll be answering those questions live, so you'll be able to benefit from that. I think that's really the best option. I mean, basically, you'll be getting a much deeper experience than I can afford to do, because of the times that I have at the retreat centers are limited, much more than I have a chance to get into in these courses. But even people who have taken the courses have found it very, very helpful to reinforce what they learned in the course by doing watching the videos.
Great. I have one other question. Joanne asked, we took this course at Esalen 8 years ago. Is it exactly the same, or is it different?
Thanks to people like you, as you know from the course 8 years ago, I always invite the people in my courses to do a follow-up call with me, to talk to me about what worked and what didn't work in that course. And therefore, I make quite a few changes in the course with each session as a result of the feedback that I get. So that's the basic. However, I find that when 8 years have passed, or even when 6 months has passed, there's so much in the course that a lot of the nuances are forgotten, and you're feeling, when I'm sharing one thing in the course, you're registering part of it, but there's another part of you that may be thinking, how will this go over with your partner, or being resistant to it, or whatever. And then when you've gone through and you've experienced the whole course at the workshop, and then you go through the video, you end up seeing things that you didn't see before. I mean, even if you've seen a movie 8 years later, you know that you see in that movie things you didn't see 8 years ago. Or as I said, it's amazing how much is lost even 6 months afterwards, which is why so many people, they go into a course, they have a honeymoon high for the weekend of the course, and then a week or 2 or 3 months later, they're back to their same old self again. My commitment is that I want you to have all the tools there to review. And once you've paid the $397 for the course, the online course, or the $297 for the early bird version of it, you have it for the rest of your life. That's really what is far more valuable than just the course itself. Joanne, if I haven't answered that question well, please get back to me in the Q&A and go deeper with me, because I'm always want to make sure I've fully answered the question. And the same thing for the first question as well.
Thanks, Warren. Let's go back into your third practice, and then we'll go into Q&A. We do have some great questions coming in. Just a reminder, everyone, do not put your questions in the chat box. Make sure you put them in the Q&A, okay? And I'm going to go off camera now, and you can continue. Warren, did you have more that you wanted to present today?
No, I was waiting for more questions.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Then let's just jump right in. How does this work if one of the partners is a narcissist?
Uh-huh.
That's a good question.
Yeah, very good. Well, we are born narcissistic, right? And a certain amount, and everything that we are hopefully taught by our parents is to trim that narcissism down and make it and balance it in life. So what's the deal if your partner is a narcissist? I would, and certainly many people attending the workshops have felt that. And there's sort of two things that usually happen. One is that as you're able to hear your partner's perspective um, in a way that is not defensive, your partner oftentimes feels less need to focus on her or himself and becomes less narcissistic as they feel heard. However, that doesn't mean that narcissism doesn't exist at the pathological level that cannot be easily cured by your hearing that person. And then, then a number of things happen. One is you may just have to let the relationship go. But I'd say about 70 or 80% of the time, that first experience is what happens. Your view of your partner as a narcissist or as whatever really is deeply impacted when you provide a safe environment for her or his perspective on the world. This is what has amazed me over and over again. So don't give up on your partner until you do this. If you do this and it doesn't work, then it may be time to move on to a different partner. And you have to also ask yourself, and I'll be asking you in the workshop to realize that the choice of your partner is the single most valid statement of the choice of your values. So I work with you in the workshop to not just look at what's wrong with your partner, but to look in the mirror and said, what were these? Either I made the decision to marry this partner or to be a significant other in a long-term way with this partner without even noticing the narcissism, or, and so I have some work to do, which is to notice narcissism. And why did I not notice it? What did I need that was making me miss that narcissism? So this isn't an easy workshop. It's, it doesn't leave you scot-free without introspection. And so that's sort of an example of, the work that you do. And then if you knew that the person was a narcissist and you married them anyway, what was your need? And, people with different needs do different things. So for example, someone may be a really open, loving, spiritual person who attends a lot of Esalen type workshops, and they've married somebody who is an engineer or a banker, and they have really upset that banker or that engineer is not also an open, loving, warm person who appreciates the art that you do. And so then in the workshop, you ask the question, what was my need for somebody with the engineer in him or her, or the banker in him or her? Conversely, the banker or the engineer may be saying some version of, my partner, she or he is always focused on, spiritual stuff and namby-pamby, sort of, it's all roses, life is, and it's very, very, she or he has a very, it's very convenient for them to do that because I earn all the money. And if my partner would help me earn some of the money, I could spend some time doing the things like my partner does and having this boutique experience of a store or going off to the workshops and telling themselves that they're better than everybody else. And so I'm always asking, and the process itself, I don't just say this in the workshop, I have you do things that help you discover this best part of each other and this need for introspection on the part of yourself.
Thank you, Warren. That was a great answer here. We've got lots and lots of questions. Thank you, everyone. So, let's see, I just had one. Sorry. This is interesting. What do you think about all of these reality shows like Ultimatum and Marriage at First Sight and their cultural impact on relationships?
I am not going to, let's see. They are, I started to say I'm not going to go there because it's such a, my analysis of it would be in depth, but it would not really help you with your relationship. Basically, to give you a really in-depth analysis in 3 words is they're screwed up. Um,
Hey.
and so they really mislead us, mislead our children. They have false values, values that we are biologically connected to, but are really destructive for us having greater intimacy. Remember, the purpose of the world up until recently was to survive. To survive, we had to fall in, we had roles. Women raised children, men raised money. Those roles restricted both sexes. Women never got a chance to develop careers. Men didn't get a chance to love and be loved with their children. They oftentimes took careers that took them away from their children. And those things were functional for survival. They were just dysfunctional for really the type of movement from the role mate to the soulmate. This course is an evolutionary shift. It is shifting us from what I have nothing to blame about, from us as role mates to us as soulmates. The shows you're seeing, for the most part, appeal to some much more fundamental instincts that are not helping us become soulmates. Like a romance novel.
Thank you. How do you overcome emotional shyness, which can prevent one or both partners from trying all the wonderful things that you are recommending today?
The easiest way of overcoming emotional shyness is to feel, much of shyness evolves from feeling that if I speak up about what I really feel, I'll be rejected. I won't be understood. I won't be heard. I won't be seen. And so shyness is a defense against those feelings and those fears. So many men who come to these workshops, or who potentially take the online course, they don't want anything to do with a therapist, because a therapist is about as comfortable to them as a football field is to women. And they always feel that the therapist is going to take the woman's side, and he's going to be ganged up on. So he feels emotionally shy. He feels because he doesn't feel he can win. And what happens in the workshop is that everyone wins. That you really have the experience. You don't just learn this as an insight, but you have the experience that there's no such thing in a relationship as winning. If you tell me you've won an argument, I'll tell you you've lost, because when only one sex wins, both sexes lose. There's no way of winning an argument. There's a way of both of you feeling understood. And as oftentimes men in these workshops come, really very tight. And then when they feel heard by their partner, it's like they feel like they can open up and maybe say something incorrectly, say it wrong, exaggerate, get angry. And no matter what they do, they're feeling really heard. Be narcissistic, they're feeling really heard and empathized with. It's like, oh my God. And then wait to see what comes out of men. All of life that has been stuffed down, because never before have they felt that it was safe to open up about it, not only to their female partner or their other male partner, but to even to other people, or to them, even to themselves. Another question?
I've got lots more for
it.
you. Sometimes an argument arises instantaneously and there's no time to prepare or meditate. How are those situations handled?
Yes, very good question. By saying, like if Liz, does a quick criticism of me or something like that, and rather than respond to her, I'll say, if I'm sensing there's energy inside of me, I'll say, let me put this on hold for a moment and listen to you better than I could right now. Now, let's say you're saying something about going to a play, taking care of something before you're going to a play, and the play is going to start in a few hours. And then you still say, but if there's a decision that has to be made very quickly, then one of the things that is before you go to that play, your daughter or son has called and said something's an emergency, and you both disagree about how to handle that emergency. You've then what I teach you in the workshop is sort of a quickie version of that, which basically is this. After you learn all the 6 mindsets, I work with you to discover which mindset is most centering for you. And so you work with centering yourself with that mindset, which will take you usually about 10 to 20 seconds to do. And then when you feel centered, say to your partner, okay, share with me what's happening here. And you do a quickie version of it. It isn't ideal. And sometimes that works, but it solves the temporary problem. And then what got shortchanged during that quickie exchange that didn't work as well as it could ideally be, you write down, you journal, you explain why your partner did something wrong with that, why you did something right. You become more and more introspective in the next stages of journaling, and then you decide whether it's something that's worth bringing up at that caring and sharing time. So it's a temporary fix that isn't perfect, but it takes care of something like what I just described. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Okay, Henry asks, the tools mentioned, such as 6 mindsets and others, seem difficult to learn and grasp. In 7 weeks, what percentage of couples actually come out of the course knowing how to do and practice these things?
Yes, I'd say that, very good question. I'd say that about 90% feel at the outset that they have grasped it, but many couples, especially ones that can afford places like Esalen, and it costs thousands of dollars to take the course and get there, where you're flying in from, they tend to be very busy people, and so they're back traveling and out again on the road doing their business that led them to be able to afford the workshop, and so about 40% of couples, I would say, don't get to doing it again for a while. And the degree to which so that this workshop is set up so that it's not just what happens at the workshop, but each week you have a caring and sharing time, and you have a structure set up that allows you to do this effectively. The people who follow through with the structure, which is about 60% of people follow through with it very rigorously. About another 20-30% follow through with it less rigorously. And then about 20-30% just don't do it. The 20 or 30% that don't do it, very little, long-term benefit. The others, the very least that comes out of it for almost everybody, actually including the 20 or 30% that don't do it, is a number of things like a number of insights like anger as vulnerability's mask. Like, if I do ever get into a real challenge, I can do this caring and sharing stuff that Warren talked about, even though I haven't done it. And just knowing that I have learned a method that I practiced at the workshop, or that you will have practiced in the online course, that led me to feeling more heard than I've ever felt before. That has been an enormous relief to many couples, even those that didn't ever do any follow-up for maybe 6 months or a year, and then they get into a negative rub with each other, and they remember that they learned this. They pull out the handouts. In this case, you'll pull out the online course and review it and get back into it again. So I hope I've given a sort of like sloppy but somewhat understandable breakdown of what happens. So basically, almost everyone that follows through with it gets enormous amounts out of it. Some people do and don't follow through with it at various levels. And yet I have to say, now that I'm thinking about it, almost always, almost everyone gets that, at least that minimal amount that I mentioned just a minute ago, out of it.
Great. Thank you.
By the way, this workshop does take a discipline. I mean, I am asking you to overcome millions of years of the evolution of defensiveness. You don't do that by just taking a workshop telling you to do that. You have to practice it. And when you practice it, the gains are enormous. Yesterday, I walked with somebody who took the workshop and shared with me how much it meant to him and his partner. During the process of that walk, I met someone else who took the workshop and shared that this was a girlfriend-boyfriend situation before. It's now a marriage. I never would have known about it if I didn't happen to meet her on our walk. It is amazing what internal security it allows each person to know that at any given time they can be heard in a way that they never felt they could be heard. But it's 10 times more useful when they follow through with the caring and sharing every week.
Great. This kind of goes along with what you were just saying. How is this workshop to be taken with a couple, together, or separately?
With a couple. I do not let people come to the workshop without a partner. I've had reporters from major papers that have wanted to come to the workshop. I say, you come with a partner and you can do the workshop. The workshop, I'm not interested in transmitting intellectual experiences to people. I do that in my books. My workshops and my online courses are about people experiencing together. That your partner does not have, first of all, your partner can be heterosexual, gay, it doesn't make any difference, but your partner can also be anyone with whom you have had a past, with whom you would like to have a better future. My former assistant and her son came to the workshop. I've had people come with their parents, which of course that son came with his parent. The siblings have come to the workshop. Straight and gay people have pretty much the identical problems when it comes to everything I talk about in the workshop. So it really makes no difference. But the most important thing is it's you come with someone you love so you can do the exercises together and discover together how much safer you feel. If you see other people feeling safe and you haven't experienced it yourself, it's just an intellectual experience. I don't want to, the workshops like my Esalen workshops and workshops like that, they're all sold out immediately. I don't want to use a wait list person's waste a spot that somebody could actually use to actually take the workshop. That feels like it's not doing my best service.
Sure. Great. Another great question. Connecting on a deeper level with my partner is something very important to me and that I desire to enhance. But what if my partner feels that things are just good enough as they are?
Yes, ask your partner if a divorce would make things as good enough as they are. I'm being a little bit overstated there, but oftentimes that is the person writing that question a female?
I already,
Okay.
I don't know.
Often the person asking a question like that is a female, and oftentimes the person they're talking about is a male, and men are very bottom line people as a rule. But if it happens to be a female that's saying it, let your partner know how important this is to you. You can do this on many levels. You can say, make this my birthday present, and make this our anniversary present. Make this something, let your partner know, don't just bring it up. Let your partner know that this is first priority for you because you want to love your partner at a deeper level. And that this workshop is not about what many people, especially men, fear, which is you'll hear from somebody who's world known what's wrong with you and what's right with me. That's what a lot of men fear they're entering. But rather you will be able to be heard in a way that no one is trained to hear their partner. When your partner knows the combination of how important it is to you, and then and give your partner permission to to do something like say, I'll go to something that's really important to you and do something that's really important to you. Remember that football game or baseball game or or that art event that I didn't want to go to. Or that vacation I didn't want to take. Trade it off for something that's really important to your partner. So trade it off, make it a present, make the emphasis really important, And if this is the most important thing to you, and it gets down to that, which, the divorce thing I was really playing with, but do let your partner know that this is that level of importance if you have to play the game at that level, which hopefully you don't.
Thank you. Is this course appropriate for just couples, or can a parent and child benefit from it?
A parent and child can benefit from it. And I say that not because it's a theory, but I've seen it happen many, many times. And one of the greatest things you can do for a child is to let them feel heard, and at the same time, give them the experience of hearing you. It's so important that empathy is not a one-way street in a family. Every teacher will tell you that on parent-child night, parent-teacher night rather, that the child in the class who is most spoiled they're surprised to see that their parents are often very empathetic. If empathy is a one-way street, it leads to a spoiled child who only knows how to be empathized with, but not empathize in return. In the workshop, it's a two-way street. You're not only allowing your son or daughter to feel empathized with, but the process teaches them how to empathize with you, see your view, your worldview in a way that almost no child sees until they have children of their own. That is one of the greatest gifts you can do for your children. And when your children see you doing this method with your husband, your wife, it is really a role model for them. But when you do it with them, it's more than a role model, it's an experience. The only negative side of it is that when your son or daughter begins to be able to hear almost anyone that they meet very effectively, they often have more friends that they can deal with. I'm being a little bit tongue in cheek there, but that is because most people are not worried about that. But so many people, so many of the peers of your son or daughter need those peers want to be heard, and when they have something to say that's critical or whatever or sarcastic, and your son or daughter knows how to understand that sarcasm is frustration on the part of the person doing it. It's a type of vulnerability, and anger and sarcasm are vulnerabilities masked. And so when your son or daughter understands that, it is amazing how many people need it so much that they begin to seek your son or daughter out in ways that they never would have if your son or daughter was just a celebrity on the campus that indirectly made other people feel not worthy of them.
Thanks, Warren. Carol asks, what is your philosophy or insight regarding the age-old debate people can't change versus they can?
Well, I now know that people can change. I mean, people don't change certain aspects of themselves, but the part of them that withdraws from intimacy because they don't feel heard, and so therefore what you're saying may not be able to change, like they're always shy, they're always a person of few words, they're always a person that doesn't want to engage in the type of conversation that I feel will deepen our love. Those types of things I have seen change in virtually every workshop, and with almost everybody to the degrees that I talked about a few minutes ago. But there are things like, your partner may always be fearful about money. They may always have a stubborn streak, but the stubbornness in relation to being heard, or that fearful about money because they don't feel they can talk with you about their fears, those are things, those parts of those underlying traits, they will change or can change.
Great. We have a couple of the same question. Essentially, is there a benefit if only one partner attends? We've had a couple people say, my other partner can't really allocate the time or the energy to do the course, but they want to. So is that, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. If you want to do the course and the online version of it that we're talking about by yourself, while I encourage you to do it with your partner, if the situation does not allow that to be the case, then do it by yourself. I think what will happen is that you will end up feeling so passionate about it that you will really make it a high priority in the ways that I mentioned to you before about your partner doing it with you. And that may need, let's say your partner is really a top-notch business person and flies all around the world and genuinely is trying to do the best for her, his family by doing that. And that you need to let your partner know this is a higher priority than the additional traveling, the additional money. Can we live in a home that's less expensive, that has a lower mortgage? I am willing to do what it takes to free your time. What can I do to free your time to spend this with loving each other more deeply? All the other things are secondary to that. And then back to the birthday present, the anniversary present, the types of things I was mentioning before.
Got some good questions today, Warren. Really?
Very good questions. I totally agree.
Yeah, great.
This is why I love doing this work. The people that care about these things, they touch my heart. They really do.
Thank you, everyone who's continued to stay on with us today. We've got some more questions coming in. When a couple plans to live together for the first time, what should be discussed or planned for to minimize conflicts and criticizing?
Yes.
That was William.
Good. So, William, the first thing to do is to make sure that everything you talk about is done in the type of way that I talk about in the course, so that your partner knows that no matter what she or he brings up, they will be able to feel heard. If they don't feel heard in a natural conversation, that they can always put it into that caring and sharing 2 hours that you will set aside each week to make sure you do those, you meditate accordingly. Second, on a much more practical level, the single biggest mistake that partners that are moving into their together do is moving into one of their homes or the other of their homes. Do everything you possibly can to be in a home that is purchased by both of you, hopefully with as much economic equity as possible, but that's less important than a home that you both choose, that you both decorate together, that you both create together, that has the fingerprints of both of you all over it. You want your first living space to be part of your couple communication space.
Thank you.
One more thing I'd say, discuss the money situation right up front. I don't mean with a prenup. I mean with what is the amount of time that you want with your partner versus your partner dedicating it to the work that they do. And if you'd like more time with your partner, are you willing to sacrifice the money that your partner may make by putting more time into her or his business? So make that get your values, especially when it comes to time for each other and money up front. No, in the Boy Crisis book, I really break this down much more specifically. And the data that shows that when a family of 4 in the United States is earning between $60,000 and $80,000 a year, depending on where in the U.S. they live, that then money is important. But once they go above the $60,000 to $80,000 a year as a family income for 4, the time, if you have children, the time with your parents is more important, particularly time with dad, who's oftentimes prioritizing money, that dad's time is worth more than dad's dime. get these things down, especially if you have children. If you don't have children, this is not such a crucial issue. But if you, obviously, but if you do are anticipating children, um, get your value systems communicated about on the balance between the time and the dime for both each other and for your children. Get that straightened out as much ahead of time as you can, and use the methods of hearing each other, so none of you shuts down part way before the conversation is complete.
Great. I missed the 4 levels of specificity.
4 levels of specificity. Yes, those are, first of all, those will be in the online communication course at all 6 levels. But an example of what of that was, I was saying that instead of saying to somebody, you're a good cook, to take it to the next level of specificity, like, I really loved that turkey. Then the next level of specificity of like, how did you get the skin so crisp? So I'm asking you to sort of be more and more specific, and then also express curiosity. How did you get the skin so crisp? Then the next level might be, how did you get the dressing so moist? Did you, what type? I love the herbs in the in the dressing. What were those herbs? Was that, and then I joke, parsley, sage, rosemary, thyme, or oregano, and that type of thing. And so those are some examples of the levels of specificity.
Thank you. Is this appropriate for mature teenagers? And is there an age restriction for participation?
Yes, it is definitely appropriate for mature teenagers. Esalen has recently agreed to allow mature teenagers in there, although they were hesitant about that for a while. But the experience has been very positive. I'd say somewhere, depending on how mature, somewhere around the 11 to 12-year-old would be, when you feel your son or daughter can really hear you communicate with them about things that either hurt them and don't hurt them, and you'd like to deepen that and make that better, somewhere in that age category would be is good.
Okay, we've got a couple more. I am in a 22-year marriage, the last 10 of which have been an open marriage. In an error.
I'm sorry, before we forget that, there's one thing I should add to the thing there. So that's the rules for my in-person courses that I was just giving about mature teenagers. For the online course, you can be much more liberal with that. Bring your child in at any time you feel it's appropriate, and you can sort of trim or skip things that are not making sense to your child because it's maybe more abstract than she or he can get. But you'll find that you'll have a good sense of that, and you'll have control over it in the online course videos.
Great.
Sorry about that. Open marriage, go ahead, go for it.
Sure. I've been in a 22-year marriage, the last 10 of which have been an open marriage. In an era of increasing frequency of consensual non-monogamy, do you feel the course is designed to address loving, intimate relationships in general, or is it largely framed in the dyadic construct of role mates and soulmates?
Yes, it is. You will be able to deal with it. So the part that's sort of limited is that I'll be asking you to bring one partner as opposed to multiple partners that you may have had in a polyamorous relationship, even though there may be different issues you would like to discuss with each of them. And the reason for that is merely because of time. In the online course, you could do this online course with multiple polyamorous partners, and each one you'd have a slightly different experience with, obviously, and to deal with the issues that are with them. So the course basically teaches you how to communicate with someone who, when you say what you're really feeling, needs to be heard. Now, in a polyamorous relationship, this is about twice to 10 times as important as this is in a monogamous relationship. When the book Open Marriage was written in the 1960s, early 70s, I think it was, Nana and Georgia Neal, the authors of that book, were two of my best friends. And they asked me to do a follow-up book based on the data that came out of the book. I had of the the after study of the open marriage book. I was focused on something else, so I didn't actually end up doing that, but I learned from them a great deal of what didn't make open marriage work. And the single biggest thing that did or didn't make an open marriage work is communication. Particularly if you have children, that is really your communication has to be extraordinary to conduct an open marriage or a polyamorous relationship if you have children. If you don't have children, it still requires a great deal more than one initially expects. Children, jealousy is primal inside of us. And so what is required to work it through is a certain type of personality, and B, even with an open-minded personality, when an attachment begins to occur, the open-mindedness begins to evaporate. And so that requires a lot of communication if you want to have the people that you've had a sexual relationship with also become people that you care about and that care about you, and that it's not just a sexual or physical experience. Does that answer your question?
Yes, great. Got about 6 more minutes and just a couple more questions. Um, Thanks so much, my dear Warren. Very insightful and practical as always. I assume most of the strategies may also be used by caring, loving managers for their staff in the workplace.
Yes, now that is correct. You will, this is so funny. I'll give credit here to what inspired me probably more than any other single thing in the course. When I was first doing these courses at places like Esalen, they were courses called Why Men Are the Way They Are, or Women Can't Hear What Men Don't Say. And I would have about 5 segments to the course. And when I would, and so one day I get home and this is in the era of letters. And somebody wrote me a letter and said, I really your course was so helpful to me, but especially the part on couples communication. I'm now using that in my family business. So I thought, oh, that's very nice. And I'm visualizing a family business of maybe 4, 5, 8 people. And then I read at the bottom that this was the president of Walmart that said that one section of his course, of my course, was so helpful to him in his family business, the largest family business in the world, of course. And so that made me realize, well, what can I develop and deepen what I'm doing here? And that is really what led to this couples course. But the strategies of being able to, to hear people who you work with, who are angry or upset, or who have a distorted version of what they believe your motives are or what you are doing. The more distorted the version, the angrier they are, the more incorrect they are about the exact description of what you do or what your motivations are, the more helpful it is for them to be able to be completely heard. When you can do this with your wife or your husband, you'll find you'll be able to do it with other people. But I will make it, one of the parts of the course is to how to do this course with everyone who has not attended this workshop or watched the online videos, which will be pretty much everybody. And so how to do it with your boss, with somebody that's your colleague, with somebody that works for you, how to do this with, heaven forbid, a Republican or a Democrat that you feel is hopeless in being able to hear you, how to do this with people that you are colleagues with, because it can be done as a one-way street as long as you are willing to be the listener and apply the listening skills, and to know that when you do apply the listening skills, it really does work. So for example, my father was an old school father. He was born in 1910. When in 1935, he'd been through, he was 35 in 1945. He'd been through 2 world wars and a depression. He was not a person inclined to make listening his first priority. His attitude toward me and to his children was My job as a father is to find out everything that's wrong with you so that I can prevent you from making those mistakes in life. That was his definition of love. And so it took me years of just listening to him before he felt safe enough to be able to completely open up himself, because he wasn't in the world where you opened up and shared the things that bothered you yourself, except in critical mode to your children. But it took me time, but after a significant period of time of just being there for his fears and feelings, he began to open up more and more, and eventually, without ever saying anything to me, was much more receptive to what I had to say, because he knew what I had to say was not going to threaten him.
Great. We have one more question.
Absolutely.
Which of your books and in what order would you recommend? Thank you for this great session today. This was Steve.
Great. Thank you, Steve, for that appreciation. I would recommend the Boy Crisis book if you have children, for sure. Also, even if you don't have children and you care about men, a brother who has children, an uncle or whatever, it's my most recent book. I've sort of snuck in many of the insights from the other books into it. I hope it benefits from the greatest amount of wisdom I have. And so I guess I would recommend the Boy Crisis first. However, I would ask you to make a decision inside of yourself as to whether or not reading a book in text is more helpful for you than listening to it. I put it on Audible, and the last few chapters are about ADHD. They were written by and are read also in person by John Gray, the fellow who wrote Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. So if your son has ADHD, or you have somebody that you know, those 6 chapters are really good. But choose as to whether you want to read it in text form or listen to the Audible version of it. I just listened to the Audible version of it 4 years after I recorded the Audible version of it a few weeks ago. I was shocked at how much I had forgotten and how much better it was than I thought it was. And with everything you do with me, if you understand, as I've mentioned in one of my emails, that if you do anything with me, if you buy this course online and it doesn't work for you, just drop me an email. I'll refund the money. Money is not the issue. If you buy the book and it doesn't work for you, Audible or print, just let me know. I'll refund the money. It is my joy to have you introduced to these things, and if it works for you, great. But if it doesn't work for you, I am helped by knowing about it. And when you ask for a refund, if you ask for a refund, so far that hasn't happened, but if you do, that would be just no problem whatsoever.
All right. Well, just a couple more things. A lot of people asked if this webinar is going to be recorded and sent out. Yes, it is tomorrow afternoon. We will be sending this via email, as well as the link again to the registration page for the 7-week online course. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you, Warren. That was such a wonderful presentation, and for all of the great questions today.
The questions made the presentation, I think. A question I have: if somebody can't attend this course with a partner, there's an option for them to be able to order this without seeing it live.
Yes.
Yes. I would definitely, for the $100, it's $197 if you don't want anything to do with me live, just the online course. $297 if you register right away. In the next between now and I think it's May 4th is the early bird deadline, and then the course starts at 5:30 in the evening Pacific time, which would be obviously 8:30 East Coast time for the actual course itself on May 12th, and then goes every Thursday after that, including May 12th at 7 Thursdays.
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much, and thank you, Warren.
No, it was really a pleasure, and thank you for great questions that really made the webinar.
Bye, everyone. Take good care.